partnering providers and vendors can interface securely into that employee record. And more importantly, we're looking at ways that we can begin assessing, analyzing, and visualizing and forecasting employee trend data. All of that is within scope in designing the new EDR. However, in this presentation, I'm not going to talk about any more about the EDR. That's a whole topic in itself. However, I will highlight one simple formula. Human capital integrated business framework plus agency-specific need equals 100%. The reason why I say that is because the baseline federal integrated business framework is a baseline. It is a bare minimum. It is not the end-all, be-all. It does not account for mission-specific needs. So how was this developed? How were these standards developed? OPM did not develop them. The federal community developed them. For every one of these columns, we went to all of our executive agencies and we said, give us your brightest, your smartest, your most skilled practitioners, non-IT, they can't be technologists, your most skilled practitioners that understand operations and policy. Bring them into the room. And they all came into the room for their particular functional area, and they built these standards. And to help you understand how the formula works, this is an actual conversation we had. When we were building the standards or the service catalog for talent development, which is everything education and training, DoD was like, well, we need a special service for field training. We're like, well, what do you mean by field training? Well, we have tanks and guns and stuff. I'm like, well, all civilian agencies, does everyone here other than LEO and DoD have tanks and guns and stuff? And the majority were like, nah, we don't. So we basically said, that is going to be a critical service to your mission that you can append the baseline with. However, we're not going to plan for it. Because if we sit here and try to capture every mission and every law that changes, every time that changes, it would never be complete. So we fully expect that our baseline will account for 80% of HR, all the universal stuff. And then agencies will not modify the 80%, but will augment it with whatever mission-specific needs they have, like field training for tanks and guns and stuff. Any questions so far? Yes, Bob.
3 questions.
3 questions from Bob.
Question 1, what's the time frame for this certification process? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now? Second question, would there be a charge to the vendor for getting their offering certified? And third question, is there an alignment between this effort and the category management effort? I think that's under GSA.
Yes, excellent. All great questions. The first question is, I heard the first question was 2 parts. The first question is, how far are we with developing these standards? Well, for talent management, we will have everything complete by the end of FY18. However, right now, we have talent acquisition complete, talent development complete, employee performance management complete, half of compensation and benefits, and we still haven't started separation and retirement. So 80% of talent management is already complete. When are we going to start certifying? TBD, we're trying to figure that out. We got to build the certification process in order to understand how to certify and when to certify. The second question is, will there be a cost? The reality is, I do not know. However, I can tell you what we're not going to do. We're not going to queue up a bunch of vendors that want to play in the space to get certified for the sake of getting certified. Because of limited resourcing, limited funding, and all that other good stuff, we're going to first certify anyone that is a viable candidate through an acquisition process. So we don't know what that looks like yet. However, general assumption is that if you're going to be a potential selectee on an acquisition, we will evaluate your product line. And we will not disqualify whether based on you are not, we will not disqualify if you are not certified by the HRLOB, because you can't actually ask to get certified, right? It's like the FedRAMP conundrum, right? I have a good product that can be that could help the government, but they're only asking for FedRAMP stuff. But there's only a small selected pool. We're not going to drive another pattern that way. All of the FedRAMP program office is doing a phenomenal job at reshaping how they're asking for those requirements in the acquisition process, thankfully. And the third question was, again, can you remind me?
Is this aligned with category management?
Category management. So, is this aligned with category management? The answer to that is yes. The BRM is currently being used. I'm currently working with the category manager and with GSA to redesign the entire HR marketplace around this model. Everything is being remapped, codification, right? So within the marketplace, you will have an area for talent acquisition. You will have an area for talent development and all that other good stuff in the future. More importantly, in the marketplace, we will be making our standards available in the marketplace itself, so that way people can see the standards and can begin understanding what they need to deliver. And third, we are working with category management to make sure that all acquisitions, all new acquisitions, at some point in the future will begin to have an evaluation factor based on these standards. Any questions? Did I answer the questions? Excellent, thank you. So what is the standard? What is an example? I'm going to give you an example here. The example is talent, there we go. The example will be position classification as a service, right? So the service we're going to talk about is position classification. That service aligns to the sub-function called talent acquisition management. Talent acquisition management, which is our level 2 function, aligns to our level 1 function of talent acquisition. Now, it kind of is complementary, but at the beginning of the call, I heard someone on the phone talk about talent as a service. Well, what if I told you I can give you the service catalog for talent as a service right now? In the model, we're going to define what the function is. But more importantly, in the model, we will give you the service catalog for talent acquisition. We will say that for talent acquisition management, you have to deliver these 7 services. So if you're going to be an as-a-service model, or you're going to be a provider in this space, you're going to offer a service suite. I can't see that. Perfect. You're going to offer a service suite. So in this particular case, position classification as a service. Position classification as a service is defined as this formal definition. You will have the delivery method. There will be 2 options, agency only or non-restricted. If it's agency only, the agency cannot outsource it. For example, developing strategy. You can't have someone else build strategy for your agency and toss it over the fence. It doesn't work that way. They could probably hire contractors to help them develop it, but not build it in its entirety. The user of service, that is the central focal point of the service itself. Are they happy? And then what are the outcomes? We will have our requirements. And I will save you the analogy. So these are the only 4 requirements that exist today for position classifications. There are not 10, there are not hundreds, there are only 4. We will have performance metrics. And performance metrics will range between qualitative and quantitative. There are 4 parts of the performance metrics: the identifying information, the calculation, and then the federal reporting frequency that's recommended. And then lastly, we had the use case. This is the actual use case for position classification. We start at identify, we end with approval. Can we do that if we say we're delivering position classification? That being said, oh, I did something. That being said, I will open the floor for questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, so this might be a little granular for this presentation, but in terms of any challenges with, facing the challenges of background investigation.
I'm sorry, give me one second.
Yeah, can you stand up and repeat that? Because
yes, for those of you on the phone, I'm gonna come to you guys in just a second. We have someone in the room asking a question. Go ahead.
So in terms of clearance process and background investigation, and with implementation of the ACT-BRM, do you see that improving the time of being able to get clearances and process for onboarding? So
that's a good question. So the question is the ACT-BRM a tool for background investigations and processing? Will the BRM as a tool improve that function? The answer to that is no. It is not a thing. It's not a tool, right? It's a practice. So what it does is it defines what suitability and continuous vetting is, including background investigations. And it's up to the policy and process part of the operationalization to really improve that part of it. However, it's to my understanding that MBIB is doing a phenomenal job of streamlining and catching up with their backlog. They're actually going through a lot of modernization in their backgrounds investigations process. Question on the phone.
Yes. Is there, this is Janelle Johnson from the Department of Transportation. I was looking at slide 9, and I'm sort of, perhaps I'm overanalyzing it, but is there an explanation about the human capital model crosswalk? Is there a detailed explanation of it? I guess I'm just not connecting all the data points and how that came together.
Yes, so we do have a crosswalk between the human capital framework and the BRM 3.0. It is not included in this set, but if just send the request to ACT-IAC, or you can email me directly on the slide. The first slide has my email address, and I'll gladly send you that crosswalk.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions from those on the phone or those in the room?
One more question on the phone. Again, this is Janelle Johnson. So I really like the explanation you had about slide 10. Some of us may have to brief this out to our leadership. So I like the way that you describe the operational dimensions, even though we're moving away from that in HR and human capital, from the human capital perspective. You mentioned people deliver, policy requires, process informs. And can you repeat the last one with service delivery? Because I think that'll help us crystallize this to our agency leaders.
Service delivery enables.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on phone?
Yes.
Oh, one more question. I'm sorry. This is Janelle
Wait,
Johnson.
sorry. Janelle, hang on 1 minute.
We have a question in the room. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about continuous vetting and suitability. So what is your plan, or what is the plan for continuous vetting and suitability of the services and the use cases? So you've done the first 3 in the talent management tranches. When will you get back to those? So you move on to, and you've got a very long list of services, right, to define. How does that refresh happen?
So the question is, when are we going to build out the service catalog for continuous vetting and suitability?
Or when are you going to, how are you going to continuously vet your service metrics and
okay.
outcomes?
How are we going to maintain the standard current? That's actually a great question. So one of the things that bothers me, that hurts my heart, is versioning, right? Version 1, version 2. Why? Because a version naturally assumes that there is an immediate and effective expiration. Meaning If I build it today, tomorrow it's already old. So what we're doing is we're going to get away from the versioning construct. And we're going to implement a 365-day, 7-day-a-week change control process. And federal agencies, federal officials, and federal managers and practitioners can submit changes through the HRLOB at any time for both the BRM structure and the standards, and we will coordinate that accordingly with the appropriate approving authorities. So the answer to that question is we will accept and process changes to the model and the standards in real time. We are looking to synchronize releases of those changes with the acquisition lifecycle, so that way we time it with OMB passbacks so they can be budgeted accordingly should they have a larger impact. However, we're still we're still baking what that cake looks like. However, there is a change control process in place for vendors. What we are going to, for the federal government, what we are going to ask is that if vendors want to make a recommendation to change of the BRM and or the standards, they have to work through their CHICO office. The CHICO office is a qualifying factor. Does your CHICO know that you're submitting this change? Because again, this is a baseline. If a change occurs to the standards or the BRM, it affects every federal agency across the board, and the CHICO needs to own and sponsor that change. Yeah. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Debbie.
What mechanism is OPM using to ensure that all agencies subscribe to the BRM and the framework? Mm-hmm. Are you putting it in regulation? You know, how are you going to hold people accountable?
The question that we have is how are we making agencies comply with the BRM and the standards? Well, first thing is that thankfully we don't. We have 100% buy-in. That was the general thought process with making this a product of the agencies. By bringing the agencies together and they building this is not an OPM product, this is an agency product. So when their agency comes in and says, we're not going to do that, I just point them to the person that developed it in their agency and have them talk to their CHICO. However, all the CHICOs are fully supportive of the BRM. They are super ecstatic as to how we've deconstructed and understood the life cycle. In regards to the service standards, that's a little bit more complicated. Right now, there are no federal policies that require the compliance of service standards. However, all agencies are playing nice, and they're supporting the service standard delivery and implementation. For example, Treasury is going down the process of developing and implementing a talent management as a service offering through procurement, and they used part of the service model to help inform that was developed at the time. DOD, DHS, HHS, some of the IC agencies, so on and so forth. But we do recognize there is a policy gap in the enforcement part of it, so we're working with GSA and OMB to try to figure out the best strategy for that. You know, asking the president to issue an executive order may or may not be the most effective way of getting this done in-house, right? So we're still trying to strategize how the best way of handling that policy gap is. There was a question on the phone.
Janelle, just your follow-up question?
Nope, you just answered it. Thank you.
Oh, all right.
Yay.
Any other questions on the phone? Okay, any other questions here? Well, I think we owe you a great round of applause because that was a lot of information, very in-depth, and you still have a lot of work to do, so Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
And it's all coming together, so again, we appreciate your time very much, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I think we have a question in the back. Bob?
Just a statement, all of this session will be available on the YouTube, the ACT-IAC YouTube station. So if you check there in about 2 weeks, you'll be able to go back and see the video and the audio so you can get any details that you might not have taken down.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks everyone on the phone. We appreciate your time. And thanks all of you for coming and fighting the traffic this morning. We appreciate it. Look forward to seeing everybody in January on the 11th.